So the one thing that I learned that made painting mountains a lot easier was thinking of it in fewer, simpler, connected shapes. All right, welcome to Paint Coach. If you're new to the channel, my name is Chris Fornatero, and I help thousands of students every single month get better at painting through my online courses and tutorials. And now actually one of my courses is my landscape painting course, which I talked about this topic in. So I'm actually just going to show you a few videos pulled directly from the course that ends with an actual full demonstration of painting a mountains, showing what I talk about. So let's not waste any more time and jump on into those videos. All right, mountains. Now, I'm not going to be giving you a bunch of Bob Ross tips, but the best kind of shortcut or tip I can give you with mountains is try and break it down into fewer, bigger shapes. This is kind of what I mean. On the left here, I've broken the light side and the shadowed side of the mountain into pretty simple shapes, whereas on the right here, I broke it down into pretty much all the shapes that I saw in the photo. And you can just see that this one is just, I don't know, it's more pleasing to look at. It's more clear, the light pattern and what's happening. It's also just going to make it easier to paint. Like I see a lot of people, they'll try and do something like this over here, and they'll try and get like every single little crack in every shadow that they see. And what happens a lot of times is it becomes too overwhelming, and they kind of lose the effect in kind of communicating where the light's coming from, and they just get lost in the minutia of the mountain. It's all about the big shapes, just like we were talking about with painting trees and wanting to block out the light side and the shadow side first in, that big shape form, and then cutting it down into smaller shapes. Same with the mountains here. So whenever you see mountains and you see the snow and the cracks and everything, don't feel like you need to paint every single crack that you see. Like you don't. It's going to actually benefit you to not do that. Now, the next quick video I'm going to show you is about color and value. But before I jump into that, if you're watching this video, you're probably into landscape painting. And if you're into landscape painting, you really need to know composition. There's really no way around it. It's one of the first steps you do in painting a landscape. And if you don't get a good composition, no matter how well you paint your painting, it's just not going to turn out well. That's why I've made my composition coaching guide. It's completely free. If you want to check that out, there's a link to it in the description of this video. Now, when it comes to the color and value when you're painting mountains, they can be a little tricky, especially if you're using a photo. Like here, this is the photo that I used to paint this painting, and you can see how bright these rocks and the mountains are, kind of like how warm they feel. And that, I feel like, trips up a lot of people. And I feel like a lot of times atmospheric perspective with mountains isn't portrayed well in a photo. Like this color here, if I pull that out, it's not that much different. I mean, it's a little bit cooler than the rock right here in the foreground. I'm sure there's areas where I can, oh wow, see, like, look how much yellow and like warm that is. Whereas in mine, I knew I couldn't make it that bright, and so I cooled it down quite a bit, and added that purple. It still is reading as being in the sunlight. This is just the shadow color now, and this is the light. Even back here, the rocks that's coming through the trees, like I still knocked it down a bit. Let me grab a good, it's a little bit warmer because it's more closer to the foreground, and then these right here are kind of the brightest, not the brightest, but like kind of the warmest is, this part right here, in the light. If you look at this painting from Edgar Payne, I think it's a great example of, painting mountains and kind of how cool you can get the colors of mountains in the distance that are in light. Like you can see back here, like this is definitely all reading like it's getting hit with light, and this is in the shadow. But you can see like how cool that color is, because he saved the warmer for the rocks that are, up front here. And with atmospheric perspective, we know the further things are away from you, the less contrast there is. And so, just the difference between the shadowed side and the light side of this mountain is not going to be as dramatic as the same kind of mountain closer to you. This is going to have a higher contrast. There's a bigger difference in value between these two values than these two values. So always keep that in mind, because most of the time when you're painting mountains, if you're able to like see the whole mountain, that means you're standing pretty far away from it. So that means they're, in the distance, and they're also very high up. And so the level of contrast is not going to be as much as it might be in a photo. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about snow on the mountains. All right, now when it comes to putting snow on mountains, first thing I want to talk about is the shapes. Just like how I talked about breaking down the light and shadowed side of the mountain, do that as simply as you can. The same thing goes for the snow. Coming back to this Edgar Payne painting, look at how kind of simple these shapes of the snow are. We got like one there, here. I'm sure if we had a photo of this, there'd be like little things of snow kind of like all over the place, but he's condensed it into these big, simple shapes. Yeah, there's like some soft, small ones here or there. That's good and fine, but he's definitely condensed it, and he's also used them to help his composition and guide your eye through the painting. It's no coincidence that these come down like this and bring you down here, and then this thing brings you here and just kind of shoots you through the painting. Starts from the cloud and brings you down here. I'm sure he left out, pockets of snow to help with his composition. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the color and value, because even when it's in shadow like this, you can see the value is pretty light. I'm going to put this in black and white so you can see this a lot easier. But it's definitely a lot lighter, but not as light as, the snow and the sun. So you have to balance out and understand that value. When it comes to color, this is really important. You don't want to go to pure white, even in the snow that is in light. Again, this snow, if you're looking at snow on a mountain, it's probably going to be really far away. And so there's a lot of atmospheric perspective. You're seeing through so much of the atmosphere. And that snow is not going to be pure white. There's probably going to be, a lot of times I find myself putting a little bit of burnt sienna in it, because that's kind of more of a red. Sometimes a little bit of yellow ochre, but you can see here, like kind of how grayed down that is. Like that's not pure white by any means. And also this right here. Also don't get caught making the snow and shadow too vibrant and too saturated of a color. Sometimes we'll see people just take just white and ultramarine blue. It might look like that in the photo, but you want to desaturate it just a little bit. Throw just a touch of like burnt sienna or something in there to knock back that blue and dirty it up. Like you can see here in Edgar Payne's painting, kind of how, desaturated that blue is for the snow that is in shadow. All right, now it is time for the full demo. I'll see you at the end. Okay, I'm going to be doing a little demonstration of mountains here. You don't have to paint along with this. This isn't like a paint along part of the course. You can if you want to, but just wanted to show you how I go about painting mountains. And I have it already drawn out here. Just put the sky in to save some time. But something I do want to talk about with the drawing and blocking it in here is I just blocked out light and shadow. You see how simple the shapes I made are? And I'm not worrying about like all these little shapes that are happening there. I'm just worried about these big, simple shapes. It really starts at this phase and keeping it simple like this. It's going to help a lot. My palette, I've got ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, cadmium red, yellow ochre, cadmium lemon, and titanium white. Gamble and solvent-free gel is my medium. Gamsol is my paint thinner, and I got number 4 brush here, and this is my sky color. A lot of times I'll just like branch off from my sky color to do the shadowed side of the mountain, because it's just going to help me with the atmospheric perspective. Again, I know the sky needs to be lighter, so I'm going to add a little more blue, maybe a touch of crimson, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna just to neutralize it a bit. I don't want to go too dark with it. And I just want to block out these shadows. Keeping everything very simple. I know there's a lot of different colors and values within these shadows. I'm not worrying about that right now. I'm trying to connect shapes when I can, and also, since my sky is wet paint, it's okay if I kind of run my brush into my sky and kind of get like a softer edge. I actually kind of want that, because these mountains are really far away, so having a crisp edge just wouldn't make much sense. I'm actually using a little more cadmium red to make this purple. Yeah. Like that works. All right. Sometimes it takes me a minute to find the right color. Right color and value. So I'm just blocking out these simple shapes. I'm going to even do it with the trees down here. A lot of people, myself included, when I first started painting, would get really caught up once it shifted in like mountains from rocks to trees. And it's really not that big of a color or value shift. I mean, the shadows in here, it's the same as the rock. So I can block these out. They kind of get smaller shapes because we're indicating trees here. Now, I want to go to the light side of the rock. So I'm actually just going to branch off from my shadow color. I'm going to add some burnt sienna. It's going to help warm it up. You know, don't get tricked in making it too warm. I actually like to start with it being a little darker and a little cooler. A little more burnt sienna, because then I can add on lighter, warmer values on top. So you're going to get a touch of crimson in there. I'm just going to block out the light side. And while I'm doing this, I can start cutting back into the shadow shapes a bit, kind of making it a little less perfect. Even have some stray shapes, you know, like there. You can see kind of how close in color and value I'm starting out with it. And then I can do things like here where I put a light shape drifting into the shadow. You see how the structure of the mountains is already starting to appear. Now I like to bounce back to the shadow and do what I was doing with the lights, which is places where I can maybe pick and choose where to drift little smaller shapes here or there. Not too many. We don't want to ruin the simple and simplicity that we have. But sometimes you need to make it look a little less perfect, or it looks too perfect. It won't look natural. Also going to kind of run my brush along these edges. I don't want them to be too crisp, even though they kind of read that way in the photo. You know, it's so far away to have a bunch of crisp edges. Might not look right. So now I can see if I can add on lighter, warmer values in the light. I don't want to go too much. So I've added like a little more white and burnt sienna into my mixture here. I'm trying to like see what areas are getting hit with the most light. Not worried about the snow just yet. I know I can just plop that on where I want. But you see how I'm kind of inching more light into them? I also want to soften this edge a bit. Now I can get a smaller brush and I can do the snow. Now with the snow and shadow, I like to just get some white and blue and a touch of burnt sienna, because I don't want it to be too saturated. That burnt sienna will knock it down just enough. I'm not trying to paint every little shape of snow that I see. Trying to keep it grouped. And also I'm thinking about like where and how the snow settles. Like the snow's in a lot of areas that are like kind of plateaus where it's collected. I'm also kind of like letting my brush, see how I kind of let that like fade off so I don't have a hard crisp edge. See, I think I might have made these too light. Yeah, a little more blue. Touch of burnt sienna. And darken these just a little bit. Very. Now, those. Now for the light, snow and the light, let's get some white, just a touch of burnt sienna, just a little bit of the blue in there. I don't want it pure white. And I'm also thinking about where these are with the shadow and connecting them. I got one up here. See how bright that looks even though I've knocked it down with some blue and burnt sienna. And then I got these under here that don't really connect to anything. Maybe that one connects there. Got one here. I'm going to put some right here. See, like this one up here, I could come back with the shadow snow color, connect it when on the shadowed side of the mountain. Wherever you can do that, it always helps sell the snow. You're going to see kind of how easy you can do mountains so simply. Now, something I can do is there's a lot of kind of different values happening in there. So I'm just going to try and see if I can find slightly lighter value, kind of indicate more of like the ridges and kind of structure of the mountain there. See how just doing that kind of added a little something to it. Here, you don't want to go as light as the snow. You don't want it to look like snow, so you kind of have to be careful of that. Now, when you come down to the trees, you see like how desaturated that green is? Like it's not that big of a difference from the mountain color. So a lot of times I'll branch off from my mountain color and I'll use yellow ochre because yellow is already a pretty desaturated color. You know, it's a desaturated yellow. So desaturated yellow with blue, it's going to get you a desaturated green right off the bat. Might add like a little bit of red in it to knock out a little more yellow. But I'm still just thinking about what's in light and what's in shadow. Gotta see how desaturated that green is. Probably even, I'm gonna pull a little bit of that burnt sienna into it. Burnt sienna is a red, which will desaturate it. Here I can actually darken this a bit. Not worrying about painting over those shadows. Now I can come back in, reestablish them. Now this is grass. It's going to be a slightly different green. It's still going to be pretty desaturated, but not as much as looks like. Whoops. Didn't mean to get that red in there. But actually using a touch of the cad lemon here. Still pull in some red. Something a little yellow ochre. And it's kind of indicating a little bit different. Probably come back and break that up a bit. Like I said, I'm going to come back with that shadow color. And since I'm going to be putting in smaller shapes, it's going to help indicate more of these being trees, but I'm still like thinking of these as big clumps. See a lot of these kind of shadow shapes dripped over. Softening that edge here because these are treetops, not very solid. Another little hole, kind of making this grass shape better. Get a little more specific with this snow shape. But everything seems to be reading well. You know, you could go in, find more detail in this if you want. I mean, it all depends on what you're doing with the painting and what else is down here. But so it's looking pretty good to me. It's so important to know, like, kind of where to put these shadows with the trees, you know, and to create form with them, especially areas where there's this grass. You know, the sun's coming from the right, and so a lot of the shadows are on the left side of the trees. That's why the shadows down here, let's make that all shadow. And it's kind of broken up. And breaking up that shadow is going to help that read as trees. Not too bad. Definitely looking like some mountains. So if you want, you can start kind of putting little fun things in. That is if you're painting a little fun. I know you're not. This isn't a far as the course goes. You don't have to paint along. I just kind of wanted to do this as a demo. But for when you do paint mountains, you want to get all this established, then you can go in there and start finding areas you want detailing. Like maybe I do want some of these rocks showing down into the tree line because they are there. There's like kind of one up here. It's about getting the big things first and then the small things. I feel like so many times people, they just want to jump straight to the small things. And a lot of times doing that, you're just making things a lot harder. See, if I want now, I can find smaller shapes. All right. So you got some mountains, light side, shadowed side, snow in the shadow, snow in the light. Painting mountains is fun. All right. That is about it for this demonstration. Hopefully you feel more confident for when you paint some mountains. I will see you in the next video. All right, hope you enjoyed that video. Again, this was all pulled from my landscape painting course. If you want to see the full course and see a bunch more videos and lessons like these, I'll put a link to the course in the description of this video. All right, I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.